If you are a first-time viewer onto our segments for today, I am your host, Juliet Abdel, aka the Self-Care Boss. I'm also the International Ms. Rocky Mountain and title holder, but in my work life, I run the Westminster Chamber of Commerce, so I'm their president and CEO. So on top of all those hats that I get to wear, I have the unique opportunity of running into professionals in the space of business and commerce, entrepreneurs. Those have been around for a while, those that have just started out. I also have an opportunity to be around those folks that are into wellness and self-care and the components of mental health, the physical health, social, spiritual, emotional, all the dimensions of self-care and what makes that up. So I always like to get this kicked off with kind of, here's what my week looked like, or what major weird thing has happened. I am back to having a phone, so I'm back to being in the 21st century, and oh my gosh, you don't realize how much you rely on your phone until you can't pick up and make a phone call. It wasn't even the social apps. Those were easy, even though I post all the time and you see me on those. Right. That wasn't the problem, but it was the making a phone call that really, and you don't think about how many calls that you make until you can't make them anymore. But I am totally reachable. And to that end, if you haven't already found me and connected with me, I'm on Instagram, Ms. Juliet Abdel, also on Facebook, Juliet Abdel. You can find those profiles, follow, and engage. I'm sporting red today. For those of you that don't know, I am a two-time aneurysm survivor and a heart and stroke caregiver to my dear mother. So heart disease prevention, cardiovascular disease awareness, and research education is a personal pageant project of mine. And today is Go Red for Women. So if you didn't know that, feel free to jump into any nearby store and grab something red to throw on, or maybe if you're at home and you're working remotely, throw something on that's red to support the cause, and learn a couple of things, right? Learn a couple of those stats. 1 in 3 women, the #1 killer of disease nationwide is cardiovascular disease, and globally as well in men and women. So very important cause. And my final thing on that is I had a great time out in New York, which is where we're both from. And so I was out there for a day and a half, very much the nostalgia set in when I was there, Yeah, oh yeah, when I heard the honks and the people aggressively, trying to get to places, I was like, I feel back home,
And the sirens, don't forget the sirens.
Oh, and the sirens, right? Like something major has happened somewhere. So I'm over there, and we had a great time with the American Heart Association. They had their Red Dress collection event with Sheryl Crow and honoring survivors like myself and others, and beautiful camaraderie. Stay tuned for as we post out facts and everything around heart health, because February is Heart Health Month. But now that I've hoarded 2 minutes, it's only been 2 minutes. I thought I was like talking for 10 already. But since I've only hoarded this for a couple minutes, we can really transition into our program. And this segment focuses on health and wealth. You're going to see guests that either come in to talk about health and wellness, like we just shared about self-care, or they'll talk about wealth and how they generated it for themselves, how they may have helped others, what their entrepreneurial journey has looked like. And then every now and then we have unique guests like the one that we have today, where you may see them again in the future because they play in both spheres. And so it's really hard to separate and get everything in one segment with them. My guest today is Wayne Anderson. And Wayne, I'm very excited to have you on today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. And Wayne is an executive leadership coach. He's also the CEO of Leadership Science Institute. And you've been doing that for how long?
In April will be 14 years.
So just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Enough to know. Or enough to get by for as long as you
just
have,
to get by.
right?
Yeah.
And the areas that you focus on, really, it's a huge spectrum. But what are those areas that you really touch on?
Okay, I'm a certified master coach. And basically what that means is I can actually create coaches, so I can train coaches. I choose not to be in that business. But it also means that I can coach in any area. I personally like focusing on professional leadership and business coaching, but that's pretty much where I focus. And as you know from my title, I'm an executive coach and executive leadership coach. So that generally means that I'm working with business owners, lot of people who are in major positions in corporations, et cetera.
Yeah, so you get an opportunity of not just working for a single individual, working with one person in a unique situation with them, but even larger entities that have by the hundreds and thousands.
Yes.
Which is awesome.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah, that's actually our business model. Our primary clients are corporate type clients, okay? And we work with the individuals within those corporations. As a matter of fact, our secret sauce is most coaches, when they go in, they usually coach the top 1.5% of the organization. We coach everybody.
Okay.
We don't care if they're the receptionist or the CEO. We stick with the old adage that rising boats rises all tides.
Yes.
Okay? Excuse me, rising tides rises all boats. I said it backwards.
I knew what you meant.
That's the first time I ever said it backwards. So we go in and we also help the organizations from a perspective that if we believe that we can raise everybody, then the corporation, by definition, is going to be successful. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. And so that's, like I said, our secret sauce, because we deal with everybody in the organization.
Yes, and our last week's guest talked about having such an open mind and being an entrepreneur, because she'd only been around for nearly 7 years, and we touched on the importance of finding mentors, finding coaches, and where do you feel like you fit into that process of someone that's looking to get a business started, or maybe they're already in business, but they're having so much issues actually being successful in what they're doing?
Yeah, and actually what you did hit on is two different things. So let's talk about them separately. First, when we're talking about business startups, okay, we help people start. As a matter of fact, at this point, I think we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 120, 125 businesses that we have helped start, or had started, wasn't sure what's going on, and we help them get back on their feet and grow. And the other side of it, in terms of not just the businesses that start, but people that are already in business, already in leadership positions within the business, sometimes things just aren't going quite right, and they're not sure what the heck's going on. Right. So they call us in. We're not only, we analyze, sometimes we analyze what's happening in the business, but in most cases, where our value comes in is it's the individual. Okay, there's something what I like to talk about is what I call space management, and that's the space between your ears. Okay, and so what are you thinking about? And I always say, as a matter of fact, we also do courses, by the way, and in a number of the courses that I teach, one of the questions I ask, especially our stress management course, one of the questions I ask is, so what are you thinking about? Yeah. And I say to them, think about what you've been thinking about.
Yes,
okay?
Yeah.
Because those are the kinds of things that are generally getting in the way of their success.
Do you feel like when you do suggest that, right, like think about what you're truly wanting to go, that there is also a debilitating side to that, right?
Yes.
Like where someone can overthink something so much that
Absolutely.
they don't take that first step?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we see that a lot. So much so that I write regular books and I write little mini books. And one of my mini books that I wrote, and I don't remember if I converted it to an ebook or not, is entitled "Your Reputation is None of Your Business." Okay, because people get in their own way, and they, for example, there are a number of people I helped to become successful when I had them stop thinking about what other people might be thinking about. Absolutely. So let's talk about that just for a second in terms of how that plays out. When I always ask them, where's your reputation, right? Your reputation resides in other people's heads. And oh, by the way, each person you interface with has a different one. Right. So if I'm going to worry about how you're thinking about me, then therefore my actions and the things I do, some of which also hit your health, right? Some of the things I do is based on what I think you're thinking about me, right? Then what do I do when I meet John, or when I meet Bill, right, or when I meet Brian? then all of a sudden I don't have an identity anymore, right? Because I'm trying to be everybody
whatever else. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so I'm sure that even translates even in business, right? When you have this idea of getting started, and we all run into this where we've got this circle of people that you bring an idea forward to, right? And it could be business, it could be even around, we were just talking about stress and your overall health, but you bring that forward, and some of them don't necessarily embrace that same perspective that you have,
exactly
right? And they slowly start pulling, pulling at that, right? So,
yeah, that's another, you hit on another one, that's an area that we tend to have to focus on a lot, is because, I mean, you can't fault the individual, right? Because that's their trusted circle. Those are the people that maybe for years they've listened to and confided in, etc. But you're right. They may not have your passion for the idea. They may not think that that particular endeavor will be successful. Why? Maybe they knew somebody 22 years ago who wasn't successful. Therefore, that business won't be successful. Yeah. And I tell people all the time, I don't care if you're going to design a new spoon. Okay, there's a market for it and you can sell it. Okay, and yes, it's good to listen to other people, but in the final analysis, you got to make that decision on your own. You got to move forward. Yeah. Based on what your passion is all about and what your brain is telling you.
Oh, and I know that is a quote that I've embraced from you, your reputation is none of your business. And it's not a callous, when you first say it, right, if it's anyone that's not from the East Coast, they're kind of like, oh my gosh, right, like you're a little bit harsh, but it's almost like a self-preservation, right, because you are controlling what you can control. Okay. And the reputation's not necessarily something that you can. You can do everything in the world to try and please those people, like you're saying, right? And adjust and adapt. And who wants to do that with 50 folks, right? But at the end of the day, you're not in control of yourself when you're doing that. You're letting go of it.
Exactly. And taking control. And both from the business side as well as the health side, that is what it's all about. Right. Taking control. We find that is a huge problem today, is because people are not taking control of what they do, what they think, where they're going, etc. One, it puts them in a stress situation. We've talked about stress, and at some other point we can go into detail about literally what physically happens when you get into that type of a stress scenario. But what happens is it basically, what I said, space management, what's going on between your ears. It doesn't have to be real. It's what's going on in between your ears, but it's enough to keep you from moving forward. Right. It's enough to keep you from being successful, all right? Now, does that mean you ignore what everybody says about you and never care about that? No, not really. Right. What I do mean, however, is don't let it control you. Don't let it be the thing that sends you this way and then that way and then this way. Yeah. It's amazing. There's two questions I generally will ask people. One is, what do you want? I don't care what everybody else says. What do you want? Yes. Yeah. Okay. The second thing I ask them is, what do you see when you look in the mirror? Yeah. Okay. And just think about that for a second. I get some interesting answers.
Oh, well, those are, those two questions may seem like they're just so basic, but they do a lot of introspection to get to some sort of an answer. Exactly. Yeah.
Let's say it's somebody, I'm going to jump to that whole thing again for a bit, because I told you I can coach in any area. Somebody who wants to lose weight. Okay. And what did I say? Oh, I've been trying and trying, and I can't lose weight. And really? Okay. So first, tell me what you see when you look in the mirror. Okay. And they describe this person that is nowhere near what they really actually look like. So the first thing we got to do is change that thought process, change that image. Secondly, I start to ask that person, so what do you think it really takes to lose weight? Oh, well, I got to reduce the number of carbs. What else? I got to reduce, and by the way, what else is it?
Yes.
Between us, okay?
Yes.
And the 900
And everyone else.
and everybody else is listening.
Yes.
That's a key phrase from a professional coach's side.
Yes,
Okay?
yeah. Well,
Because
continue to
we want
keep
you to
going.
date, right?
Right.
And so I'll say, what else? And they'll say, well, maybe I have to eat less sugar.
Mm.
You know, I eat ice cream every night. Maybe I
Oh my
shouldn't do
gosh,
that.
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
What else? Well, maybe I should exercise. You know, and I keep doing that until they say, well, I don't think there's anything else. Okay. So if you, let me understand, if you do all of these things, you believe you can lose weight.
Mhm.
How come you're not doing them?
Mhm.
And their initial response is usually, oh, how do you know I'm not doing them?
Oh, goodness, yeah.
What do you see when you look in
And go back to those initial questions. Yeah.
Exactly, okay? So now, let's take that same person and put them in a corporation,
Mhm.
okay? What kinds of things are they worried about? They're worried about their image, they're worried about other people looking at them, and we talk about this kind of stuff in a coaching scenario, right?
Mhm.
My question to them then is, well, if you're thinking about all those things, when do you think about your business?
Mhm. Between all that.
Exactly. You want to understand why your business is not moving forward. Think about what you've been thinking about.
Yeah.
Okay? And if you've been thinking about all of these other things, then you're not thinking about what you should be. Now, once we start to get that brain turned around, well, you also know I'm certified in applied neuroscience.
Mm-hmm.
Once we get that turned around and we start to understand how that brain is processing and how that brain's acting, we simply, people hate when I say this, we simply reprogram it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I use that term because you can, I'm stealing this from Dr. Dennis Waitley. He says that your subconscious is your robot.
Mm.
And we don't realize on a daily basis we are programming our robot. Okay? For example, if I was going out to play golf, I don't stand in front of the ball and say, boy, I hope I don't hit it in the woods.
You don't?
No, I don't say that. Okay? But what does a good golfer do? A good golfer gets up there and he stands and says, this is the hole-in-one today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
Just change.
It's a shift.
And what happens? You see, your subconscious doesn't care. It doesn't know from right or wrong, up or down. It be cold or hot. It doesn't know. It only knows what you tell.
Mm-hmm.
So if I tell it I'm a great golfer, if I tell it I'm the best coach on the planet, guess what? It says, okay, you're the best coach on the planet. Okay, then you probably need to do this, and it start to literally physically change it to do those things.
And is that something that, you would have to say one time to yourself, right?
No.
Like if you are someone that, whether in both spheres, so we hopped from health to wealth, right? And would someone look themselves in the mirror and say, I am the best, owner of X, Y, and Z, and then that's it, that one time will kind of set the tone? Or, how does, how does that build up and naturally become?
It has to be a mantra, okay? Let's think about something simple that your subconscious does for you, okay? You're going to leave here, you're going to get in your car, and you're going to drive home, or drive someplace, okay? Are you going to be thinking about, okay, I need to turn here, I need to turn
No, and in fact, sometimes I feel like,
How did I get here?
Yeah, you're
That's
like,
right. What actually happened? You, at some period of time, from this building to your house, you've told it, this is the way I go. And you kept telling it. You might, the first time it might have been a little shaky, the second time it might have, but once your subconscious learned it, it told you, think about something else, I'll get you home.
Yeah.
Okay? Go do something. So what you did is you programmed it to act and do a certain sequence of things that got you home. That's what it, if I said to you, 1 year from now, I'm going to have an additional $1 million in the bank. So now I'm jumping back to the wealth side.
Right.
Okay. Most people aren't wealthy because they don't believe they can be wealthy. Okay. Because I ask them, well, could you think you can double your income within the next 12 months? Oh, no way I can do that. Okay. I said, okay, if I told you I was going to have $1 million in the bank an additional $1 million in the bank next 12 months from now. Do you think I can do it? And they say, well, yeah, you might be able to do it. I said, okay, let's fast forward to a year from now, and I said, I only got oh, by the way, they usually are worried about failure. So I say, okay, 9 months, now it's 12 months from now, and I only got $900,000 in the bank. Did I fail?
Well, it depends on how you look at it, right?
I didn't hit my target.
But you still have
And I'm going to cry all the way to the bank.
But you still have it, right. That more than you had before you even get started.
Exactly. So the other thing, and so now I'm really going to focus in on the wealth thing. The other thing is, one, you have to believe you can do it. Because as soon as you believe you can do it, your subconscious starts making you aware of things to make that happen.
Right.
Okay? And secondly, you got to stop the stinking thinking. You got to think about what you've been thinking about. You got to stop saying you can't do it. And then giving yourself all those reasons. What do you think you're telling your subconscious? How do you think you're programming your subconscious? So, if we turn those words around and instead of saying, oh, I can't do it, that's too much, I don't have enough right now, I don't know how to, instead of doing that, telling your subconscious, boy, am I going to be excited when I have that $1 million in the bank next year. And every time you think about, boy, am I going to say, what happens, and it's really, really amazing the way the brain works, right? You know how it is when you go and buy a brand new car. You bought that car because it's really unique. You've never seen that car anyplace else on the road, right? And you buy the car, and you're so excited, and then the next day you wake up, you go for a drive, and you realized everybody else went out that last night
and they
bought that same car.
Same
that
color,
same car.
same model, everything.
It's amazing how that works, isn't it? Well, what happened? You programmed your subconscious so much and got focused on that car. Now, every single one that you didn't see before, it made available to you.
Interesting.
Okay? So, if I keep telling myself, now, do I just sit here and say it over and over again and next year I'll be $1 million? No. Okay? It doesn't work that way. You do have to get up and do something, all right? But here's the magic. Here's the magic, okay? And in one of my books, I called it the magic. Here's the magic. Is just like you saw all of those cars the next day, when you keep telling yourself, and you should tell yourself in almost the past tense, I already have this $1 million. Here's what I'm going to do now that I have $1 million, right? All of a sudden, you find out, oh, look at this. This guy's got an investment I had never seen before. It's called ChatGPT. And all of a sudden, I heard that there's going to be, people are investing billions of dollars in this thing. Okay? It's always been, it's been there for months. Okay?
Right. You just didn't look at it.
I didn't see it before. Okay? It's always been there, just like those cars. They didn't literally go out and buy the car the same time you did. Okay? So your subconscious says, oh, is that what you need to do? Is that what you, then it makes you aware, okay, of things that you otherwise didn't see. Okay?
That's so well said. I see a lot of you all hopping on and off with us and tuning in. I'm Juliette Abdel, your host for today's show. We've got Wayne Anderson of Leadership Science Institute, Executive Coach and CEO, talking all things health and wealth. We are streaming live on KUHS Denver. Feel free to type in any comments or questions into the chat, and if I have the time, I'll weave them in for our guests today. But we're on a pretty great roll, so I'm just going to keep us going, if that's okay. And you touched on several different things. So, and I hadn't thought about the car scenario, right? When you start seeing things until you're programming, so it makes more and more sense as you're discussing this. But do you feel like being a coach, right, you're seeing this for someone else a lot more clear than themselves?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. All the time. You know, it's, at times they call us a therapist, and I have to, we're not therapists. You know, therapist works because something's broken. We don't believe you're broken. Okay, so, but because of that insight, we're able to, and after doing this for many, many, many years, okay, it's not difficult to see the patterns, okay? And when you see the pattern and you start to describe that pattern to someone, to the client, how did you know I was thinking that? How did you know? That's it. Or I'll say something like, let me guess, this happens when you're home, or this happens when you're in the office. Oh my God, how did you know that? Okay. So yeah, it appears that we have some insight into them that is magical, and we're clairvoyant or something. When in fact we've seen the pattern. We see pretty much see the thought process, and the thought process generates the behavior, and the behavior generates the outcome, whether it's the outcome you want or not. Okay. That's kind of being my new book.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. When's that book coming out?
I'm still writing it. Probably not until next year. And I'm jointly writing it with my business partner, Danielle Hicks.
Oh, nice.
Dr. Danielle.
Yes, that is awesome. So when we talk about getting started in a business and generating wealth, right? We alluded to that a couple of times. The initial time in having an idea and thinking about the idea, but not overthinking to where you're debilitating yourself. We also touched about sharing with your trusted circle and being open to critique and feedback. That's natural, right? Like I think that's a way to improve an idea or maybe look at it differently. But again, not necessarily have that stop you from pursuing it if you still feel like this is something you want to embark on. But are you seeing now with the state of the economy, more people are also worried that there's going to be an economic collapse or a recession that we go into, and that those external factors, right, they're not from people that you know in your circle, but it's stuff that you see on the news or a price tag on eggs, right, is indicating that things are not the same as the climate for business. How do you answer that for folks that may be on the fence about getting started or continuing?
Yeah, and the people usually are in two camps. Okay, generally the Wayne camp, where we study all of that stuff all the time and we know it, and our behavior is a certain way. And then you have the ones who don't, so they're kind of watching the news and getting concerned and etc. So how do I handle that? Well, first, I make sure that they understand reality. Okay, now, I'm not going to argue that in today's economic environment, it's confusing. Okay, you have the Fed's raising interest rates, which generates layoffs. However, at the same time, we have full employment. Okay, so, and we have more open jobs than we have people who are available to fill those jobs. So the numbers, you have some people saying, oh, we're going to have a recession tomorrow. Others are saying we're in a recession right now.
Yeah,
okay, so it can be confusing to someone who doesn't spend a lot of time thinking and talking about it. So it takes more time with that. And the first thing we do is bring them into reality. Okay, and what is that reality? That's the thought processes that the other camp has, and that is, this isn't the first if we do go into a recession, it's not going to be the first one. As a matter of fact, we just had one in 2008. Okay, are people getting laid off? Yes. Are you laid off? No. Then why are you worried about it?
Right.
Okay. Now, we do have some people coming to us who have been laid off, who haven't, this is the first time they've been laid off in 15, 20, 25 years. So I give them one of my books. So we talk to them about the mechanics and the strategies of getting a new job, et cetera, and how to move forward, and et cetera. But in reality, most of the people that I interface with, remember, these are generally leaders of organizations.
Right.
They're just, if they have to, they're pivoting. If they're not pivoting, then they're probably failing. Okay? In other words, they don't look at this as, and this is something that's super important when you're either going after generating wealth or you're trying to build a business, is, you can't look at these things as being debilitating. You can't look at it as something that's going to prevent you from moving forward. this is a mere challenge. Okay? It's just the fact that you started a business. There's risk, there's challenge, there's all of that. You need to look at this environment as just one more of those things. And you don't say, this is in my way. What you say, what am I going to do now that it's here? Change think about what you've been thinking about.
Yeah.
Change what's going on in between your ears and turn it around. And it's amazing, absolutely amazing how many companies weather the storm.
You can overcome. Well, and when we started with how long you've been in business, which was 14 years. And if you correlate that to when the last recession was, and when those, you've seen those people that have weathered those challenges.
Yes.
And
oh my God, very much so. Yes. Yes. To give you an example, I will give you one example. Okay. I have a client who, and most of them, when they first come to me, they come to me with just the idea, right? They don't know anything about business. They don't have startup business. And he came to me and he says, and this was in 2000, it was not long, it was probably 9 or 10. It wasn't long after the recession. Okay?
Yeah, within a year or two.
Yeah, and he had been laid off. He was been one of the people that got laid off during the recession. And he came, and he hadn't been able to find a job. And he came to me and he says, you know something, I don't know if I want to work for anybody anymore. He says, I said, so what do you want to do? He says, I want to create a food truck that has churros. That's all I want to sell is churros.
Oh,
that's all I want to sell is churros.
I bet you can make millions off of that if I'm around.
A lot of people around. Okay. Right. Fast forward to last year, I think it was the middle of last year. He sent me an email saying, gosh, I just had to tell you, I'm about to purchase my 5th truck.
How amazing is that?
Okay, so think about it. This could have been a person who could have just gone down, 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 down
Easily.
As a result of the recession, losing his job, and unfortunately the company he was in actually went out of business. And all of those things, depending on his thought process. But what did he say? He said, you know something? I'm not happy with this. This is what I want to do. And here we are, in numbers of years later, where he's got 5 trucks, one that's parked, by the way, in one of the malls, I forget which one of the malls, all the time. It generated so much activity that the mall people came to him and said, could you just park this thing here?
Awesome. That is amazing.
But it's all about what he was thinking about.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't the environment. It wasn't the economic situation. It wasn't the fact that eggs are $10 every you can go buy a chicken. I mean a real one.
Right.
Okay. Those things didn't matter.
Yeah.
And it brings me to a saying I created and put in one of my books years and years ago. And that is, when the dream is big enough, the facts don't matter.
That's well said. That is well said. The external factors can propel you
Absolutely.
to follow your dream, right? Like
Absolutely.
Whether it's a reception, whether it's getting laid off, whether it's the negative energy that's out there, they can help you in achieving it, but they, they can also hinder you. But it
That's
goes
right.
back to the mindset
That's
that
right.
we were just talking about a few minutes ago.
That's right. And you're right. And here's, to me, the most powerful word on the planet.
Yeah.
Okay? Because it really can send your entire life one way or the other. And that is choice. Okay? I don't like to say people make decisions. Okay? Because what are we really doing?
Right?
We're making choices. I can either do this or I can do this. Which one do I want to do?
Right.
Okay? I can either go this direction or that direction. I can either be an average person that cares a lot about what other people think about me, or I will not care about what other people think about me and go the way I want to go. And by the way, does that mean I ignore people and I become a hermit? No. Just weigh carefully the input you're getting from it.
Yeah, and it's
And don't let it
empowering stuff.
sway you
Right.
from, and that's the key.
Yeah.
And that, I use the word control it.
Yes,
Okay?
yeah.
It both puts yourself in control,
Mhm.
and it also empowers you.
Mhm.
Because once you change that mindset,
Mhm.
what's going on between those ears,
Mhm.
it's amazing all of the other things that come into play. Okay?
Yeah.
To help you out.
Yeah. No, I couldn't. And you know this, Wayne. You've known me for nearly the 6 years that I've been here in Colorado,
That's
and
right,
so
pretty much.
and we've worked together over the last at least 3 years on myself and personally, and embracing
right.
this mindset and everything. And
That's right.
you have to be aggressive. You know, I am very aggressive with my time, with where I put my energy, with what I do, because it's so easy throughout the day to have those people that are just trying to nip away
Absolutely.
at you doing those things, right? Whether it's small comments, it's glances, it's, you know, whatever it is, it's so easy to fall into the, let me look at those things and stop what I'm doing. But when you know, one way or another, I'm going to do this and let go of, you know, what everyone else. I mean, it is a freeing thing, but you have to be very, and aggressive is the only word that came to my mind, right? But you have to be aggressive with your self-control.
Absolutely. And you hit on such a great point, because you have, again, those are choices. You make a choice about who you're going to spend your time with. You make a choice of it, and those choices that you make should always be moving you towards whatever that endeavor, whatever that goal is that you've established, okay? And again, it's the way you think about things. I'm going to give you a little story. You know that I was in the corporate world for many years. I won't say how many so that you don't watch a grown man cry, okay? So, but I was in the corporate world for quite a few decades, and mostly in senior management positions. And I remember I was at, when I got my first vice presidential position, okay, multi-billion-dollar corporation. And I went to lunch with a friend of mine who was one of those that was in my circle, and I listened to him. And during the lunch, he said something to me that actually threw me, okay? He looked at me and he said, "Wow, you're a vice president now." I said, "Yes." He said, "What does it feel like to be a black vice president?" And I said, I thought about it for a minute, and I remembered something that one of the other vice presidents, who's a woman, Mary Jane Thornton, I loved her to death, and she epitome of a successful person, okay? And I remember something she had said to me about when she was asked a similar question. And I looked at him and I said, "That's funny you should say that, because I don't see myself as a black vice president. I see myself as a vice president who happens to be black."
Yes.
Okay? Now, and by the way, at that time, I didn't know there was something called neuroscience. Okay? But I think back on that occasionally, only because, and I was very successful in the corporate world, okay? And I thought, and think about it every so often, I think back on that and I say, wow, it was the way I was thinking about things that helped me to be successful. And by the way, I was born and raised in the ghetto.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, it's not that you weren't aware, like you were a black man, right? Like.
I mean, I didn't wake up one day and all of a sudden, oh my gosh.
Right, like, but it's the fact that you didn't have that as like a mental block.
That wasn't,
you were doing.
I never even thought about that. Okay? What I did think about is, if I wanted to be a vice president, what does it take to be that? I have to know these kinds of things. I have to learn this kind of stuff. I gotta have this kind of a networking ability. I have to be able to speak in public to hundreds or thousands of people, which I have in my career. You know, those are the kinds of things, because I had an organization of 3,000 people at one point. I have to get up and give them directions in thought processes and how to be them to be successful, which by the way, then their success comes back on me. But those are the things that it took to be a vice president, not the color of my skin. So those are the things I thought about every day. Those are the things, and by the way, what happens when I talked about wanting to be a vice president? then everything that I need to know that came to me.
Right, slowly came to you. But you know, you shared a few things here, and I don't want to lose sight, because you know me, if I don't say it, then it's just gonna slip out. The first is that it's Black History Month. We just kicked off Black History Month,
I forgot about
February
that.
1st, right? And so in conjunction with
Totally
Heart
forgot about
Awareness,
that.
our minority communities are affected the most. African Americans are affected most with heart disease and even
Yes.
health equity and everything,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But what you're saying here, and what I want to emphasize to folks, because I don't want them to be like, what, he's not seeing that he's Black, right? It is the controllable, the factors that you control. That is what you are focused on controlling, right? You can't change, right? Like nor do you want to. Like, I don't want to change the color of my skin, or being for any of that.
That's
like, you
me.
embrace that. That's
Yeah,
you.
that's me.
Those are things you're not going to change. You don't want to change. But there are other things that are within your control to change in your pursuit of being that CEO, being your own boss, and those were the factors that you subconsciously programmed yourself to focus on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is the thing that gets in people's way. Okay. And that is not, again, focusing more on the external, focusing on, when I say your reputation is none of your business, my reputation's in your head. I can't control what's in your head.
Right.
So why do I care about it?
Exactly. And everyone's going to have bias. I don't care who you are, where you come from, what you do, how old, young.
I have a course that talks about, that helps people
They're all
understand all of the different
Yes.
biases that people
Yes.
walk around with. Okay, so if I can't control that, and people say, I just can't, control what I do, or this person made me do such and such. Oh, I love that one. Okay. No, they didn't. Okay. Or if they get to the point where, this person makes me feel bad all the time, my response to that person is, why do you let them?
Right. You're choosing to have them.
You're choosing.
It's the same
to
as
have
like
them.
forcing yourself in an environment. If I go to an environment, I'm not going to force myself to stay in it. If I'm uncomfortable, one, I'm going to try and speak up, because you know us, right? Like, we're going to say something. But then we're going to, if it's not something that we jive with, why am I going to put myself in that environment?
And now let's break that down just for a second again, okay?
Sure.
Right? Because we talked about wealth, we talked about health. But think about it. Okay, I'm thinking right now about what somebody did to me yesterday. Cut me off on the highway. Okay? That person, and I'm going to get all excited. One, it puts yourself in a stress state, and we can talk about what happens there. But when you're letting that thought process dominate your thought processes, I ask the person the question that they really hate, and that is, why are you allowing that person to control your emotions?
Right.
What? They're not controlling. They're not controlling me. Then why are you bouncing up and down in the chair? Right? And oh, by the way, the other thing they hate when I ask is, I said, okay, what do you think that person's thinking about you right now?
Yeah.
Well, they're probably not thinking about me at all. So why are you thinking about that?
Right.
Why are you letting that person control your emotions? Okay? And I'll give into emotions just for a second, the mechanics of emotions just for a second. Okay, but that's one of those things that's outside of your control. So why are you even thinking about it? Why are you worried about it? Okay?
Right.
Now, let me just talk about emotions for a minute. Again, this is something that came out of one of my courses, okay? And by the way, these are facts.
Yes.
Okay? No emotion in the entire world happens without first being preceded by a thought. No emotion happens without first being preceded by a thought. The thing that goes on between your ears. Okay. If I was to say, yesterday there was a plane crash, how would you feel about that? You feel pretty sad, right? I ask people that question, and they say, I'm feeling sad. And I'll say, why are you feeling sad? The plane crash happened yesterday. Why didn't you feel sad yesterday?
Because you didn't think about it until you
didn't think about it. You didn't know about it. The thought didn't hit your head until I told you. Okay? All right. So no emotion occurs without first being preceded by a thought. Now, where are your thoughts? They're in your head, right? My thoughts aren't in your head.
No.
They're not on the table, not in Henry's head. They're in my head. Okay? So if they're in my head, I can probably control them. Let's put it all together. No emotion occurs without first being preceded by a thought. My thoughts are in my head. I can control my thoughts, so therefore I can control my emotions.
Right.
It's amazing how many people talk about, oh, he made me feel so bad, and I really, no, you made you feel bad.
Right. He may have done something, but
That
how,
you didn't like.
Right. How you chose to take that and respond to it.
How do you responded to it
Yeah.
is what's making you in the state that you're in
That
right
you're
now.
choosing to be in.
So choose, that's why choice is
Yes.
such a strong, powerful word to me. So choose to think about something else. I have one person who I get her out of her, or how I got her out of her stress scenarios. Senior person in a major corporation, multi-billion-dollar corporation, was stressing all the time. And she happens to be single. She was a vice presidential level person. And I said to her, at one point, I said, boy, you're really stressed. And she said, no, I'm not.
Oh my gosh.
And by the way, we don't even know half the time that we're stressed, right? So I said to her, okay. And oh, by the way, the reason we were having this conversation in our coaching session, which is our regular coaching session, the reason we were having this conversation is because she was worried that she was being viewed incorrectly, and it was going to impact her work, etc. Okay. So I said to her, I said, where do you like to go on vacation? And she says, oh, well, almost every year I go to Hawaii. There's this one resort I like to go to. And I said, so what do you do? And so I asked her a whole series of questions. And we got to the point where her most favorite thing, the thing that relaxed her most, is laying on the beach with a drink, some drink with an umbrella in it, okay, and twiddling the warm sand between her toes. Okay?
Very specific.
Very
and it was
specific.
intentionally like that.
I asked her enough questions to get to that level. And what I told her was, every time, and by the way, first I had to let her feel the times that she was in stress, because she didn't realize that she was in stress, okay? Let her feel how her shoulders feel tighten, her neck tightening up, and her voice changing, etc. And so when you start to get there, what I need you to do is just stop for a second, go to the beach. The thing you just described to me, I need you. And by the way, while she was describing it, right? Her head tilted, she got this little smile on her face, she kind of started glowing, right? Totally calmed down, all right? And so I told her that. Okay, so from now on, when you start to feel stress, or somebody's not to just stop for a second, and they're not going to know what's going on between your ears. Go there, okay? Oh, a month or two later, she told me that was, of the 4 or 5 years I had been working with her, that was the most important thing I ever told her.
Wow.
Okay? Because all of a sudden, what happens, right? Your brain gets, and I'm not going to go into the neuroscience things that are actually going on in your brain, but what essentially it blocks a lot of your other thought process. Let's just say that happens. And the part of the brain, the frontal lobe, the frontal cortex, which is a creative activity, okay, which is a logical activity, essentially gets bypassed, okay? When you put yourself back into that state, it brings that part of the brain back on, and all of a sudden, you can get creative, you can solve problems, you can logically think through things, okay? But that is a physical response to to what you've been thinking about. And by the way, remember what I told you, that's what she was worried about. None of those things ever happened. One of my favorite quotes is from the author. I'll think of it in a second. But what he says was, I had a lot of things to worry about in my life, none of which ever happened. Okay.
That's so funny.
Mark Twain. That's one of Mark Twain's quotes. But that's what happens, okay? So we go back to what I said at the very beginning. Think about what you've been thinking.
Totally.
So it can impact your health, it can impact your abilities to generate wealth, it can impact your ability to be successful in whatever endeavor it is that you are pursuing.
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes sense. Well, I want to emphasize that people can find you on LinkedIn.
Yes.
That is, that you're on Coach
Wayne Anderson.
Wayne Anderson, thank you. I was like, what does
Yeah.
that say? Coach Wayne Anderson. They can also find you on Twitter, Wayne80023, on Facebook, of course, Leadership Science Institute, or look up Wayne, and then on Instagram, LSI Wayne as well. And Wayne, I know we did not even touch on every single thing that we could have touched on today, so I will be bringing you back on here in the future, but I do want to thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. This was kind of exciting.